Awesome. Welcome to another episode of How Creators Make Money, where we dive into unconventional ways creators are making money. Today we have our buddy Megan Lightcap. Megan is a partner at Creator Fund by Slow Ventures. And what is unique about Creator Fund is they invest in creators. They invest in like a person instead of a like an idea, like a traditional VC. I met Megan back in SF and we had a lot of wonderful conversation about creator economy, investing, the VC world. So in this episode, we'd love to dive into like your experience as an investor, your how you do like events, your thoughts on the creator economy, unconventional ways of creators, how creators make money, and yeah, welcome to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys. So excited to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I'm also curious, like, there's also things that you mentioned about like Riz and Tiz that I would love to dive into, but first,
There's lots to dive into, lots to
there's a
dive
lot to
into.
dive into. You have the
Yeah.
Creator CEO Summit coming up in LA.
Mhm.
Um, But I'm also curious, since the Creator Fund launched earlier this year, what has shaped your thesis, like, in investing in creators instead of, like, ideas and companies in
Yeah.
general?
Yeah, I can kind of walk you through some of our thinking as to how we arrived at this specific formation of kind of backing creator. Um, Slow Ventures is a seed stage venture firm, that's been around for, the better part of a decade, investing in, early stage companies and early stage founders kind of, across sectors, across industries. And a couple years ago, like 2020, 2021, one of the GPs and co-founders here, Sam Lesson, really had this thesis, which is, obviously we saw the likes of Mr. Beast and Feastables and Emma Chamberlain Coffee, and so on and so forth. Like the super big creators kind of going out and launching businesses on top of their communities and distribution and whatnot. And you kind of play it forward, and like our job as investors is to like think on like almost like a 10-year time horizon and invest in today what may be true kind of 10 years from now. And so if you kind of played that motion forward, our view was that this sort of like entrepreneurial activity was going to happen in all corners of the quote unquote creator world and not just kind of be limited to the biggest names. And even further, right, if you think about what our fundamental job is as an early stage investor, it's really to match capital with entrepreneurs like early in their journey. And I think being agnostic as to, like, who that entrepreneur is, how they show up in the world, where they build distribution is, like, the key here, and so we kind of said, "Look, I think there's gonna be a class of entrepreneurs that really are creators, where they're building community and distribution around a very specific vertical or niche, and building that online." And they're going to then in turn, launch products, companies, services, businesses right on top of their distribution and community. And so, so I guess 3 or 4 years ago, we started this really what was an experiment at the time of okay, how would you invest behind a creator, right? And many people were investing in creator upstarts and infrastructure and tooling, if you remember that whole wave of like investing in the creator economy, some of which ended in flames, right? Some of which was did some companies did okay. And then like the next wave was investing in the creator brands, a la Feastables and a la Chamberlain Coffee and whatnot. But we were like, look, the interesting property here is like the brand equity actually sits off balance sheet, right? And with the creator and the community and not actually with the product or company. And so the classic example we look toward is Mr. Beast launched Mr. Beast Burger. And it was like the hottest thing since sliced bread. Everyone was like, this is amazing. It's going to disrupt McDonald's and so on and so forth. And fast forward about a year, he came out was pretty unhappy with the partner and the kind of the quality control around it. And he was like, look, I'm going to go all in on Feastables. Like this is the thing. And, Mr. Beast Burger, I don't think had any outside, independent shareholders at the time, but you could imagine if they did, there would be this inherent conflict of interest with investors, right? Where they're saying, "Jimmy, like, don't go work on the chocolate company. You told us, you're gonna do this burger company." And basically, like, where you put your attention is what is most likely to succeed. And so we kind of said, "All right, how would you basically abstract a level up from that and really just be in business with the creator in their community?" And so I kind of invented is too strong of a word, but kind of conceptualize this idea of investing in kind of creator holding companies. And I think like the easy way to say it is like we're investing in a person, but it's actually, I mean, there's a real company around it, but we're investing really in the creator's holding company, which is inclusive of content and media and different formats and businesses and products and things that they may launch within their kind of creator ecosystem, if that makes sense, versus a singular product, brand, service, channel. And in turn, right, the creator can actually use that capital super flexibly across those different activities where we're not sitting there being like, no, no, like we invested in the chocolate business, so you have to go use this capital for the chocolate business. So at the end of the day, this idea of investing in a creator holding company really seemed to be the most efficient way to kind of align incentives between the creator and the investor, which is obviously slow.
So that's super interesting. And like the question that I've always had in the back of my head, and the reason that I built Declassified the way that I built it, where I'm not actually like the face of the brand, right? We hire on talent very much more
Totally.
like a BuzzFeed or a Barstool, right? Versus a quote unquote traditional creator, is what happens if the creator ever wants to get out of the
Mhm.
business, right? And we've kind of
Mhm.
seen it a
Mhm.
little bit
Mhm.
recently with a few creators trying to transition off and things of that nature. And it seems like what you're betting on is that the creator kind of stays within, or the creator brand, right, kind of stays along the long haul. How do you guys view that challenge in it?
Yeah. So my take, which is like a little different, I think, for most people's, is that like actually like the person is really important in the short and medium term. Not in the long term, but in like the short and medium, right? Like I think people have the emotional attachment to the person. I think that's kind of where the surface area of opportunity emerges from. They very much help shortcut, right, a lot of the like customer acquisition and lifetime value uh economics. But the North Star is that this creator goes and builds a company that can kind of transcend their personal brand, where they don't have to be in front of a camera every day promoting the thing, talking about the thing. And there's a couple of examples like this. So one that comes to mind, which is a much more scaled example, is this company called Meat Eater. Do you know this? Do you know this brand? So this is a creator, Steve Ranella is his name, and he's very big in the like fishing, hunting, kind of outdoors niche. And he, through a number of different like business building activities, has launched this brand called Meat Eater, selling it's an e-commerce business selling a lot of the products and paraphernalia related to that. And it's of a scale where if you ask, like, the next marginal net new buyer, right, like, who Steve is, they probably don't know. And that's, like, a beautiful thing, and that's kind of the place you wanna get to, but it's incredibly important in the short and medium term to actually have the creator play a big role in it. I mean, Skims is another amazing example where, like, people aren't buying Skims because they love Kim. They're buying Skims because it's a really excellent product, right, that has been thought of by her and, kinda she's the creative director behind it. And you could argue in the business's infancy, right, like, that's actually how it broke through and kind of reached escape velocity, but, like, now the business totally stands on its own in a way where I think if Kim took a step back in a meaningful way, it would still be totally fine.
Do you think that that's why I would say like the first wave of creator businesses, let's call it that, kind of all included the creator's name in it, right? You can even think of Beast Burger, Feastables, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
all kind of includes Mr. Beast in there. Even Chamberlain Coffee, right? But this new wave, whether it's Ryan Trahan with Joyride or Ashley with Nami Matcha,
Yep,
right? It
yep.
nothing really in terms of the brand that they're selling doesn't include the personal brand
The
within it.
Yeah.
Is that the way that you're kind of seeing continue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like one, I think it's in part stylistic, right? Where I think creators are now such a force in our economy that like they almost like don't need to kind of name it after themselves, but it could also be intentional. It's like I'm going to build something that kind of lived beyond me. I mean, Kevin Espiritu over at Epic Gardening is another fabulous example where he was such a part of it in its infancy and even in its, early maturation, and now the business is, like, really doing super well, and I think he's been able to step into more of, like, kind of an operator role where he's not the single reliance point for sales and marketing. But it's interesting that you point out that trend because it's something that we definitely see, or at least creators have kind of, like, weaved their name into it, but not in such a blatant and overt way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've seen more like Joyride snacks, Nami matcha, more creators kind of like detach themselves. I feel like creators as people evolve a lot, so it makes sense to do, like, short and medium term. I'm also curious, I remember you mentioning, like, Riz and Tiz. For those who don't know, there's, like, a whole graph about Riz and Tiz. Like, you need
Is
to
there?
optimize Riz. Yeah, I can show you. My friend made a whole YouTube video about it.
Wait,
So
that's
if you
amazing.
so, like, imagine, like, the, y x-axis is, like, Riz, and the y-axis x-axis is Riz, x-axis is Tiz. If you're only Riz, then you're, like, a grifter. If you're only Tiz, then you're, like, really smart, but you're gonna, like, quote, unquote, "die alone," and you need to have both because you need to be able to build, and you need to be able to sell, and so people have to do both, and you mentioned, like, investing in founders/traders with both Riz and Tiz. I'm so curious, like, how do you evaluate Riz and Tiz?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This is actually something we stole is probably too strong of a word, but we lifted or borrowed from Ariel Zuckerberg over at Long Journey Ventures, or at least that she's the first person I heard speak about this framework, and she obviously invests in kind of regular way founders, not creators, and so the idea is that actually it's pretty transmissible to creators, which like kind of the upshot of that is like at the end of the day you're investing behind an entrepreneur and a founder, whether they're a creator or like someone out of MIT. And the basic evaluation is exactly kind of as you described, Grace, which is starting a company is like a heroic thing, right? Like it's probably going to fail. Like the statistics tell us as much, and so you have to have a certain level of charisma to bring investors, shareholders, customers, employees, other stakeholders along for the journey in the context of like this is likely to fail, right? And so that takes a certain level of um marshaling the troops and telling the story and sharing the vision and so on and so forth. um and so there's a lot of that you can kind of evaluate, and different ways to evaluate whether it's a true founder or a regular founder and a creator. And then on the Tiz part, I think there's like it kind of goes hand in hand with the charisma, which is like there just has to be a certain level of obsession that like you get up every day again in the face of these like pretty jarring statistics of your failure rate, right? And just keep going. And like, it was interesting. I so we just invested in a creator, well not just, we invested in him back in April, but it just did the announcement last week into a YouTuber in the woodworking space. His name is Jonathan Katz Moses. And I was down in Santa Barbara at his workshop. And I'm not a woodworker. Like, obviously we went through the diligence phase and I got to understand the category in the industry, but like it is not my hobby of choice. And he took me around his workshop for whatever it was, 2 hours. And the level of detail and specificity with which he was showing me products he was, that are in his roadmap, or different things that he had discovered that will like unlock X, Y, and Z business opportunity. I mean, the guy is like next level obsessed with what he does. And it's like that sort of like you can't fake that, And it's like you just have to like sit with these folks and like really understand what drives them and what motivates them, and like kind of suss out if their level of obsession or tis right around this thing is real. And I don't know that that's something I think that just like kind of comes with repetition. And interestingly, in the creator space, so many of the people that we talk to are actually practitioners of whatever their niche is, and so it's in some ways like easier to suss out, because they're kind of living this thing day to day. It's like they're every day. It's not as if they're trying to start a company from scratch and they identified like a market opportunity. They're like already in it. So yeah, it's a good framework for I think investing kind of in any format.
Can you give us an example? Like, it doesn't have to be an exact example, but like, what does someone who doesn't look obsessed sound like, so to say, around a topic versus someone
Ooh,
that
that's
does
such a good question.
look obsessed? Because I think a lot of people think that they are, right? And then you talk to someone who's really obsessed about something, and you're like, okay, I get it. Like, this guy or girl spends 25 hours on specializing in this 1 millimeter of wood that he or she
That
is
is
using or something.
such a good question of like what's the anti case, or what's like the counterfactual. I mean, I'm actually trying to like recall someone recently where we were like like I don't know. Here, I'll give you this is not like a perfect this is not like a specific example, but um this is kind of one way to think about it. Is like we talk a lot about internally of this idea of like having fun. And like if the founder or creator is not having fun doing the thing, like you're basically dedicating your life to this thing, right? Like you're waking up every day thinking about it, you're working on it for 15 hours a day, you're going to bed thinking about like they have to have some level of like joy and fun in what they're doing. And it doesn't matter what it is, right? Like everyone has different definitions of fun, but like we've met a couple founders recently and creators where it's like they kind of like Bain analysis their way into the problem space. And you're like, I feel like you're doing this because you think you should be doing it versus like this is actually like what you're being like called upon to do or like what you deeply find joy from. So that's like one way to kind of suss it out. Is really just ask yourself like of all the things you could be working on, right? Like why is this person working on this thing and like what's the story? Like does it actually click? Is there like joy and fun kind of embedded in it? Because as you know, like building a company is gnarly. And so I think like there has to be some level of joy that kind of propels the person through. So it's not a perfect answer to your question, but that's one of the ways in which we've recently been talking about internally as to like how to kind of suss out that level of obsession, if you will.
Yeah, fascinating. So I find joy in something. I'm so curious, like,
Totally.
how is your process in investing in Jonathan when we're working? Like, what were the steps from like start to like getting the
Yeah.
check?
Yeah. Great question. So we did the launch and the announce of the fund back in February, closed and did some press around it. And I guess he came across maybe a press article or something and decided to reach out to us. We have like an application form on our website. And so we unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, but unfortunately got inundated with applications. I think we got, 600 or 700. And so it took us a couple weeks to kind of sort through them all, but spotted his application. I don't exactly remember like, it was an interesting niche. He seemed to have like a good story around it and good articulation, at least in words of like where he wanted to take the business. And so hopped on a call with him, got to know him and his business. Um, met him in person in Santa Barbara. Again, like understood his operation, his level of obsession. Then we did, very standard diligence on the existing business. I mean, he has a big kind of content operation, but then also an e-commerce business. And so we were able to do, pretty standard diligence against that. Um, sorted out a deal, figured out, had a lot of conversation around like, okay, what amount of capital actually unlocks this next stage of growth for you vis-a-vis, the amount of dilution you want to give up and a lot of those sorts of conversations. And figured that out and aligned on terms and then papered it and then we wired the money and then off to the races. And for him it was fun because he has a remarkable story as to what led him to YouTube initially and then entrepreneurship. And so he felt very strongly about wanting to make a YouTube video kind of sharing that story and then, his interactions with Slow and how he met us and whatnot. And so um we were like, you have first bite at the story and kind of the press around it. And so he made a video and then we on the heels of that did some more traditional PR around the investment. But he is you should go watch his YouTube video kind of telling his story. It is like truly, truly remarkable.
For sure. And I think what's really interesting about this, so my background, I went to school for finance, so I kind of understand a little bit about the
Where'd you go?
finance world. UCF. So not Target School or anything like
Cool.
that, but like
Yeah.
it's always super interesting to learn about how people are getting into the creator world
Yeah.
because right, the traditional creator world is not very numbers driven, so to say it's more creative. That's why they get the views that they typically get. With that being said, when it comes to VC or anything venture backed, not all businesses are venture scalable, right?
Mhm.
But like, what does a successful exit look like for you guys? Because I think some people might be listening to this and they're like, hey, a business that generates like 1 to 2 million cash flow a year, that'd be amazing. But that might not be what you guys are looking for, right? So I just want to make sure that everyone understands because I think people romanticize VC and like entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
especially with like Shark Tank and things of that nature that
Yeah.
pop up, which I
Yeah.
think it does net positive for the world.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are businesses where it makes sense versus doesn't make sense. So could you explain that a little bit deeper?
Yeah, totally. And I just want to well, I guess two things. I do have 30 minutes at the end of this, so we can go till 4:30. Um, so I just want to clarify too, is when we're thinking about like the exit path on these, I think there's a lot of confusion as to, is the holding company the exit, right? Like, is that the thing that's ultimately going to sell? And interestingly, it's not, right? We make the initial kind of investment into the holding company, but the idea is that we get our, approximate equity stake in the different businesses that they spin up. And the idea is that one of those companies will ultimately exit. It's not actually the holding company. So I just want to clarify that point because I think it can confuse some people as to like, okay, well, who's buying like the Jonathan Holdco, right? It's actually like who would buy his e-commerce business or who would buy the next business he may be incubating, right? So that's more how we think about it. And then, yeah, I mean, from an underwriting perspective, there's a lot of creators who are building media companies, right? Which is amazing, right? Like they're cash flowing, they know their audience, like they know where the next dollars are coming from. It's like it's an amazing business to own 100% of. Those are not actually the right types of creators for our model. Whereas, we look for creators. I'll give you another example. There's a creator who's actually he's become a good friend of mine. He's in the construction space, and I use him a lot as an example because it's so clear as to like how this all works, which is he's not in residential construction. He does like infrastructure, roads, piping, bridges, things of that nature. Probably has like a million on Instagram, maybe 700,000 on YouTube. Like he's pretty big. And his cult, right, his fandom is all like contractors and SMB construction execs and like people who just live and breathe this industry. It's a big podcast. Um, and so his ecosystem is comprised of a media business, right? Of newsletter, YouTube, Instagram, podcast. Um, I'm sure he's on TikTok. He may be on Twitter. I can't remember. Then he has an events business, right? That's like profitable and gets like big name sponsors. I went to one of his events in the last year and it's like unbelievable. Like you walk into this thing and it's like Caterpillar and John Deere. It's like you walk the floor. It's like a full trade show. Um, and then he's like, look, like I just have spent so much time with this audience in this industry. Like I have this information at my disposal, which is, he spends all day with these folks and he's like, what are your pain points? Like what keeps you up at night? Not as it relates to advertising, which is like the traditional creator business model, but like actually running your business day to day. And he's like, the thing I hear again and again is two things. One around like people management, right? Of like, it's a very transitional workforce. There's no like LinkedIn, but there's like certain qualifications and compliance and safety things that like matter. Um, and then two, right, there's a lot of software that caters to the top 100 companies, but like the long tail is massive and these companies are like pretty big, right? Like, I think like the average size of a long tail kind of a construction company is probably like 100 million in revenue. Like these things are like big companies, but the software is priced such that like it's almost too expensive to make it work. And so a lot of this industry is actually kind of taped and glued together with like Excel spreadsheets and Google spreadsheets and Word docs and things of that nature. So he's like, I am sitting on this massive opportunity to go build software specifically designed for like the needs of the construction industry. And oh, by the way, I have X million qualified purchasers that like tune into my podcast, pay me $3,000 to come to my event and like hear me pitch the software. Like it's this amazing ecosystem in and around construction, storytelling and media and software and events and industry trade shows and connections. And so the thing for us is like, okay, you look at something like that and you're like, well, one of the software ideas could sell to, Prologic or one of the big construction companies, right? Like it's a very like you don't have to squint very hard to like see the exit path. And so you do that, but for physical therapy, you do that for woodworking, you do that for um commercial fishing, right? Like so on is the chief financial officer industry. Like you pick your niche. And that's kind of the same version of our internal conversations, but it usually has to do with a very different industry or a very different niche. And so that's how we think about like the exit and liquidity here. And so when we meet creators, right, if they're kind of just pitching us a media business, it's not all that interesting. But if they kind of describe something akin to that construction, whatever, like we're like, yeah, like this is really interesting.
it's like building a cult. Like, you have to have a really cult following, like, they're the cult leader, I
Tot
guess? Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
totally, and, what's really interesting is, like, we're just in this world where it's no longer about, like, one singular thing. It's, like, about, like, the world and the ecosystem, the franchise these people are building around it, right? Like, take the example I just described, like, those different pillars all, like, support one another in a really interesting, like, flywheel type of way, whereas and then it's what's even more interesting is you talk to, a founder building in the construction industry, and they're like, "I have this, like, amazing technology and amazing software, but, like, no contractor is, like, returning my call," because it turns out it's a very high trust industry, it's extremely analog, it's extremely fragmented, and so it's like the distribution and go-to-market method being a creator is, like, freaking genius. Like, that is the opportunity, and so, again, I think there are, like, way more versions of this than people can even conceptualize, than even, like, quite frankly, we can conceptualize just given the number of times per week I'm like, "Never consider that is a niche that we would invest in," but, like, here we are, right? It's crazy.
What are some, like, creator cults you've ran into? Like, the construction, the woodworking? I know you mentioned there's, like, a doctor who specialized in this
There's so
cystic
many.
disease, but, like, yeah.
There's
What are
so
some
many.
exciting
Like,
ones to you right now?
okay, so an exciting one is honestly commercial fishing. That's one I'm, like,
Uh,
actively chasing. I this is not a, creator per se, but someone introduced me this morning to someone, she's doing, like, $1 million in sales on courses for, uh, lymphatic drainage for horses. Like, you guys, this is, like, it is so specific, but then you're like, "Okay, like, sounds crazy, but, like, is it?" Right? Like, the equestrian industry is, like, really big, and, oh, by the way, like, the spend is immense, right? These are people of generally high income, right? High discretionary spend. There's this deep emotional attachment to horses, like, in the same way of, like, traditional pets, like, people are willing to spend whatever, and if you can eke out, like, a little bit, you know, 5% more, 1% more better performance by, like, giving your horse a lymphatic drainage massage, like, you're gonna do it, and so the point I bring it up is like, and I don't really actually know how big the market for that specific thing is, and you gotta go do all the analysis, but the point is like, these things are sneaky big, right? There's another creator who I love. Her handle is Glucose Goddess. Have you heard of this woman? No? Yes? Okay.
I have not.
No, no,
Literally,
no.
guys, like, literally all her only thing is she talks about blood sugar regulation. She's this, like, beautiful, like, French scientist. And she has, like, 1,000,000 plus on Instagram. I don't even know how many on YouTube. She's selling supplements and courses and meal delivery and this and that. I think she maybe even has, like, a Netflix doc coming out, but it's all about blood sugar regulation, and you're like, "Pretty niche." But then, like, everyone is thinking about blood sugar. Like, it's actually, like, not that small. And so there's just, like there's endless examples like this, that we meet and we're like, "Holy crap, like, this could be something really big."
So how do you like Grace and I we love to talk about this concept of cults, right? Because I think
Yeah. Oh,
creators
you're talking to the right
like
girl.
right, yeah, like the best creators in terms of the ones that are able to turn something into a business or sell a product, whatever it may be,
Yes.
right? They have a strong cult.
Mhm.
Again, I'm gonna test the finance brain side of things. Have you
Yep.
found a way to sort of quantify what it means to have a cult like following? Because I think that's the most interesting thing with
100%.
creators
100%. Um, I don't know quantify, but, like, you can do it
or
qualitatively
signals,
for
I
sure.
guess.
A
Yeah,
hun
signals.
yes. I'll give you a perfect example of, like, one of the things that we talk about internally. This actually came up with a creator we're doing work with. People were dressing up as her for Halloween, and you're like, "That's amazing." You're like, what other who else is out there where people are actually dressing up as this person for Halloween? Like, that's a great sign. Or, I kid you not, like, getting tattoos or putting a really interesting signal is when people put, um, the, like, descriptor or, like, cult member thing in their Instagram bio. Almost in the same way as, like, someone in, like, a sorority or fraternity would put, like, "Okay, Justin, whatever, 8924, you're part of phi, I don't even know, like pi, chi, whatever, kappa, beta, whatever, right? And it's like class of 20, so it's like those are really interesting signals. So like tattoos or weirdly, this is another good one. Um, you have to have haters. Like if people have people who are like F that guy or F that girl, like that's actually a good sign. Like do you guys follow I'm sure you do, Brian Johnson?
Yes! I love his
Like
I just, like so many tech bros worship him, but hate him too.
exactly, exactly. And like he he has a cult, right? Like people are actually attending like don't die events and oh, another signal which we see all the time are like when the community forms outside of the creator, right? So there's like meetups or WhatsApp groups or connection points of like the members um forming together, coming together with an absence of the creator. That's like a really interesting signal. Actually, I don't know why I'm like describing this. I literally wrote about this exact topic a couple years ago. Justin and Grace, I'll send you my writing on it. I wrote about it in the context of Taylor Swift and like all of these like properties of a cult, right? And so like one of the really interesting things that um that she was able to do is like there were certain like hierarchies forming within her fandom, which is like pretty interesting. Or she like tightly controls like the narrative or message. Anyway, I'll send you the writing. I like did a whole thing on this. And then the last recommendation, then I'll shut up because I've been talking a lot, is there's this new book. Actually, I don't even know if it's new, but it's called Cultish by Amanda Montell. And it's basically like, have you read it, Grace?
I've actually read it. I love her podcast. I listen to it all the time. Sounds like a
So
cult.
she does like a huge deep dive into all this stuff. So anyway, we can talk about this for forever, but like there are definitely certain signals that we look for um that are like, cult light, if you will.
Are you personally part of any cults yourself?
Um that's a great question. Like not really, but I think that's also because like I do this for a living. And so I'm kind of like I mean, that's not true. There are certain creators I like ride for them, and I just like love their stuff and support them in any way, shape, or form. But because I'm like so inundated on a daily basis, like evaluating people and meeting different people, like honestly, like a lot of my like non-work time, I try and actually take off screen. Like I'm like a little bit like I want to like distance myself from it just because it like otherwise it's like too much. And then weirdly, my I know that you asked this question, like my algorithm is like I almost, like, don't want it to get, like, too messed up in my own, like, echo chamber of stuff, right? So anyway, I, like, try and, like, be, like, a little bit arm's length from all of this stuff, kind of in a non-work context.
Mm. I love how you mentioned, like, haters are big signal like, a good signal for a call, 'cause I feel like haters are just confused fans. They obviously take time out of their day to comment and watch their content, so they're helping their watch time go up, and they're just confused fans. They're
I
actually
love
fans.
that. I love that framing. And by the way, like, they just, like, continue to, like, put people on the map. Like, it's great. There's, there's this hilarious, like, I don't even know if you would call it a meme, but this thing going around of, like, uh I forget what it's called. It's like anger marketing or something. Or basically, like Time
Oh,
came
rage
out with this
baiting?
list of like rage baiting. Yes, Time. Yes, exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Time came out with this list of like whatever, like 200 best venture capital firms, and they put like Slow. I mean, we like don't give a shit about any of that stuff, but like Slow is like number like 176 or something, and we were dying laughing because we were like, whoever like the person at Time whose idea this was, like, they need like 3x or they need a promotion, they need a raise because like this is fabulous rage baiting. Like, that people are like freaking out about this, like reposting it, calling saying they're wrong, the whole thing. It's great. It's great. So
It's
yeah,
the best
you're right.
marketing.
Yeah, you're right. They're just giving free marketing to these creators.
I love that. It reminds me of, like, the Cluely, how Cluely's marketing is going, like, rage baiting you into cheating. It's
Totally.
beautiful.
Tot
Yeah.
and it was brilliant because they basically, like, bought so much free PR and press. It was brilliant.
my question, because it seems like you're one of these people that are actually obsessed about the creator economy, cults, things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think there's been a lot of people, as the hype around creator economy has kind of grown over the past 3 or 4 years. A lot of people have jumped in, but you definitely seem one that's a part of the culture and things of that nature. But that's not necessarily your background, right? You kind of worked your way
Mm-mm.
through finance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you like? Why did you make that transition, and like how did
Yeah,
you do that? Because these are
yeah,
very different spaces.
totally. And it's funny. I actually like don't even consider myself like obsessed with the creator economy. Like I'm actually more obsessed with like consumer behavior, right? And like that is and like the creator economy is actually the most like important manifestation of it in like like that we know, right? Like so that's actually kind of like my entry point to it. And so my background is yeah, started in finance, hilariously did like financial institutions, investment banking, but like I've always been obsessed with like consumer behavior. And so like even so, they'd be like, okay, like Cabela's, which is like a huge sporting retailer, has like a big consumer finance arm. Like, who wants to work on that? And I was like, me, like, like take me off of like banks, like get me out, you know. And then went to work at a fund called El Catterton, which is like a huge consumer private equity fund, very traditional consumer, like restaurants and retail, apparel and accessories, CPG, consumer services, consumer technology, you name it. And that was like, I was a kid in a candy shop of just, this is like, if you're at all a fan of consumer, this is like a dream where like quite literally my weekends were spent like walking up and down the aisles of like Whole Foods or in a like just like looking for like new brands that would resonate with people based on different trends and things. And like, it was like, I'd even built a like phantom portfolio before I started because I didn't have any money to like do angel. Like, it was just like, I was like spot new things and like kind of like build my fake portfolio. And then went to the startup side, at first, in a company, kind of a startup incubated inside of Walmart, biggest retailer in the world. And I was like, okay, this is like the perfect place, blend of like old school retail and new school, like startup and incubation and technology. And that was a blast, crazy story, but a blast. And then the last place I went, kind of, which was like the second inning of the startup that I was working on, ended up being a logistics company. And it was kind of this like wake up call for me, which I was like, I just like miss the consumer. Like I miss like consumer behavior and understanding that. Like I don't necessarily want to be solving what is just a math problem of logistics. And so and I kind of missed investing. So met the slow team, and Sam was like, we're kind of thinking through this thesis on creator, like I'll tell you about it, blah blah blah. And very quickly I was like, probably not for me. I think you should, maybe go look at CAA or UTA and someone who's closer to digital talent and Hollywood and that. And over the course of conversations with him, it became very apparent that this was actually closer to consumer investing than it was like talent spotting, if that makes sense. And one of the things, and I actually write about this a lot of like, and I'm writing about this like the kind of like the second edition of this, which is like really this like creator opportunity to me is just a consumer one. And like one of the exercises I did before I took the job was I said, okay, and when I was at Catterton, we had done this on the margin where we, the buyout fund had done Jessica Alba's Honest Company. We brought in like Zac Efron into Kodiak Cakes, and we tried to like finance a celebrity makeup artist who was like, I want to launch a brand. And we're like, well, we don't know how to think about like investing behind you without a company. And like it was so funny because now like we've kind of figured it out slow. But so I had seen this on the margin, and then I said, okay, Megan, like basically go write down the last 15 things you've purchased, right? Or consumed. And what was a catalyst for doing so, right? Like, was it a recommendation? Was it because it was a habitual purchase? Like, what influenced you? Who or what influenced you to buy that? And I like did that. I did the audit. I like, quite literally pulled my credit card statement, like did the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, like this is overwhelmingly people, right? Whether it was a creator or an influencer I followed, or even a friend, right, who had recommended a product, or my mom. But like not a single thing in there was just because it was like a traditional brand. I mean, like maybe like medicine, right? Like that was like the only, and so I was just like, it was like this huge wake up call for me of just, okay, who is controlling consumer mind share and wallet share? And like whoever is doing that is going to win this next wave of consumer. And so I got like really excited about this whole thesis kind of in that vein. And so I kind of came at this whole like creator economy actually from a totally different angle. And like to this day, I actually still feel like an imposter when people are talking about like old school media and like, streamers and they like that's like it's like tangentially relevant to what we do, but like not 100%. Where, you talk to me about cults or the emotional reason for why someone might have this parasocial relationship with a creator and what that means for like buying into their world. I'll like talk about that till cows come home. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's like kind of my reason for or like my entry point into this whole crazy world is like not actually from a creator economy angle. It's actually from like kind of like behavioral science or like consumer behavior standpoint.
I love consumer behavior as well. That's why I'm so fascinated by cults and why people buy stuff. I'm also
Totally.
curious, like, yeah, in your perspective, how has consumer behavior changed over the years and where do you think it's heading? Like, for example, I feel like people used to like follow like celebrities and then these like big creators, and then now it's like more niche communities. I'm curious to hear like from
Yeah.
your perspective, how do you see it? Like, how do you see like history of it and where do you see it's going?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I see, which is like, there's been, yeah, the age of the celebrity, right? Then, people have kind of fragmented into like bigger creators and different platforms, right? And now it's like totally fractured and you kind of like opt into your tribe or your community, however niche it may be. Um, I think the I guess two kind of things that I see happening. One is like, the definition of a creator is broadening at, like, a rapid clip where, you know, 2 years ago when I was talking to CAA or some of the big agencies, and they'd be like, "Who are you looking at?" And we'd be like, we give them the examples, and they'd be like, "Oh, we would never touch those people." Like, I'm talking about, like, scientists or NASA like, crazy people that they would never even consider. And now they're like, "Oh, yeah, we had a conversation internally about, like, which scientists we can sign." And I'm like, "Okay, like, that's really interesting," right? And so it just, like, it serves to confirm this idea of, like, kind of everyone's a creator. Like, it's just, like, this whole new world where trust and distribution matter more than ever, and I think that's gonna, like, continue to be the case. Um, and then 2, the other thing I'm kind of tracking or seeing is, like, and I guess hyper relevant for this podcast is like ways in which the creators are making money. And so like one of the things that we've seen recently is what I would almost call like creators going like direct to fan. And so you see obviously like Patreon had like a big headline which was like, past 10 billion in creator payouts. Substack just raised $100 million in their Series C or, some later stage round. Um And those 2 experiences are really interesting because people are actually, like, self-selecting into an experience and paying for it, right? Paying the creator directly, surpassing or bypassing rather advertisers and bypassing, some of the gatekeepers. Um, and then the other thing too, like, look at the rise in events. I think Axios reported, I wrote about this last week, ticket sales for podcast stores and events are up 500% year on year. And I think it just like goes to show that there's going to be so many different access points for creators and ways to make money. And then even, this morning, and I'd be curious, both of your take on this is, um, I was talking to someone this morning about trends in AI in the creator space and whatnot. And one of the things we're observing is like an increased chatter around basically like a new economic layer that like sits on top of AI where like the super long tail of creators can actually be compensated if AI is like using or sourcing their content, be it writing or video or whatever, right? Um, because the AIs just have such greater ability to parse through stuff at such greater scale that like the creator in their, in Nebraska who does a fabulous write up on X, Y, and Z, like their work can actually be accessed at scale, right? And referenced where otherwise like a human would have never been able to find that person. And that person probably couldn't compete with the likes of the SEO of New York Times or Wall Street Journal, whatever. So there's just like a lot of change afoot, I think. In terms of how people make money and how they rise to the top and their visibility um and then kind of combined with the fact that like everyone's a creator is it's just like I think we're in for like a really interesting couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the best way that I like to explain it is a lot of these quote unquote unsexy industries are now becoming a little bit sexy just because
Mhm.
people understand how to make that content sexy. For
Yes.
instance, the random person in Nebraska, right, that does this write up, but is able to get a bunch of views on it just because she wrote it really well or whatever, maybe. Or the construction persona that you were talking about earlier, right? These are not industries of content creators that you would think of because they don't compete with the Kai Cenats, the Ryan Trahans, the Mr. Beasts of the world, but they are that persona in their own niche. Um,
Totally.
so like as you've started to parse through a lot of these creators that I assume get sent to you on a regular basis, are there any ways that you think that the average creator is kind of under monetizing their content right now? Or maybe they're not even aware that it exists.
Yeah. I mean, so just to kind of yes end your prior point, like there's like an identification issue too, where it's like, okay, that person in Nebraska who's like the go-to, I'm making this up, floral expert because I'm looking at flowers, right? Like they probably don't even self-identify as a creator, right? They're not going to VidCon, they're not going to VidSummit, like they're not opting into the creator economy. And so for people like us, it becomes really interesting of like, okay, like there's no aggregation node for these people. So how do you go find them? And right, like when everyone is kind of has different definitions of what a creator is. So it's just it's becoming really interesting, like, the field is like, the rules are changing on the field as we're playing, and it simultaneously creates a tremendous amount of opportunity, but also it's, like, one of the main challenges of what we do, um, so anyway, wanted just to call that point out because there is, like, a really interesting ripple effect of what you're talking about, in terms of how creators are under monetizing, I think it, like, very much depends on the type of creator, right? Like, I think it's again, back to my point, it's, like, extremely hard to generalize what a quote unquote creator should do, given that there's so many different types now. I mean, honestly, one of the things that I'm seeing, and not to sound like a broken record about it, but like one of the things I am seeing is just like people's success around events and like hosting in-person things, both as a way, honestly, to like diversify your revenue stream and like make money, but like kind of test the limits of your fandom, right? Like I think a lot of creators like think they have huge and engaged followings and they ask people to show up in person to a thing, let alone pay for it. And they're like, maybe I don't, you know? So I think it's just like that to me seems like something that I'm just seeing more and more of creators kind of trial and experiment with. And it could be, I mean, they could charge for it or not. So I don't know. That's like an exact, it's like not a perfect kind of monetizable avenue, but, yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like, it very much depends on the type of creator and the category and the community.
Yeah, events are such a great way to build a cult. Like I do like so many events for
Grace, you're
design
a perfect
buddies and stuff.
example. You're a perfect
Thank you.
example of it. I mean, honestly, when we went on our walk and you're telling me about, like, how many people show up, and by the way, like, all over the world, like, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? And it's like, you probably learned a lot, right, as to the boundaries of your fandom and your
Mhm.
cult, if you will, when you do those. I mean, yeah, you're the perfect example.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so much fun because like for us, like for design buddies, we started during the pandemic, and then basically 100,000 people joined our Discord, and it's been really fun. Like I kind of go at it as like I want to make friends in different cities, so I can see the city as a local, but also like learn about their culture too. So I learned so much from people. And I have seen like big creators host events and like no one shows up, and it's kinda sad, but I feel like for me, I don't have, like, tens of millions of I'm not, like, the biggest creator, but people do show up around the world, which is I'm also, like, very honored, so, yeah, thank y'all for Design Buddies for also tuning in as well. So I have people who follow my content for, like that have been following me since, like, I was, like, 16, from Tumblr that have grown with me, so it's been fun, but I'm so curious, like, for the kinda diving into events, I know you have the CEO summit coming up in LA, but when you in your experience, like, attending these creator events, what kind of things do you notice? Is it, like, their fans dressed a certain way? their fans like talking about something, they're all obsessed with something. What usually happens at like an event a creator hosts?
Um, well, there's a difference between events that a creator hosts and like what I would call industry events. And I think part of the reason we're doing this creator CEO summit or however you want to describe it, we like went back and forth on the name a little bit, but um it was almost in a reaction to VidCon. I don't know if you guys have been to VidCon. But in
Because
recent years, it's been kind of the same story of like it could have been 10 years ago. Like and the content hasn't changed. The story of the day is still around like CPMs and thumbnails and optimization and it's like we have moved past that. Like creators are building billion-dollar brands. They are highly sophisticated. Like that is like one very narrow slice of what they're thinking about and so we were like there hasn't really been or at least there's this huge gap in education and knowledge and connection around creators actually who think of themselves like CEOs and entrepreneurs. And so we wanted to bring together this sort of creator archetype um and really have people who have done it, right? Like share stories of what went wrong, what went right, what to consider, like gotchas, blah, blah, blah. So I mean, we have some amazing, panelists, everyone from Sarah Hardin, Hello Sunshine with Reese Witherspoon to Doug DeMuro of Cars and Bids to Jonathan Katz Moses is coming and, some investors. And it's going to be a great day in terms of, for people who really care about building massively scaled businesses. Oh, do we lose Grace?
I think, yeah, I think she's
Okay, we'll keep
gonna
but she'll
jump. Yeah,
rejoin, I
yeah,
assume.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
It's really just a day for people to kind of connect, who kind of buy into that orientation and kind of want to build their creator businesses as such. So, yeah, it was more just a reaction to the standard like industry event. And then what I'd say is with respect to events that creators are throwing, it's just so fun. Like there's two that come to mind. One is obviously the trade event that I was describing with this construction crap. But the other one is open sauce. Have you been to open sauce? Do you know what that is?
No, I haven't. No, what is open sauce?
Okay, so open sauce. There's a YouTuber, William Osman. He's kind of in like the STEM maker space. And this was the third year he's done it. I think the first year was like maybe 5,000 people showed up. The second year, like 30,000 people showed up. This year, probably something similar. And it's amazing
That's
because it's like
insane.
it's insane. And it's all these like it's almost like a maker fair where it's like all these makers and STEM creators and it's their fans and he gives his fans an opportunity to basically exhibit. And so you walk around the floor and there's hundreds of exhibitions, everything from people who are like, you know, students at MIT building like rocket engines to I swear one of them last year was people converting porta potty water into root beer. And it's like, this is just like such a classic, like these are the people who like live and breathe this guy's stuff, right? And it's like they have the chance to present what they're working on, plus be in the presence of all their favorite creators. It's like an amazing moment, all kind of denominated in this niche. So it's very cool. And I think like we're starting to see a lot more of these like specific types of creator conferences, even something like BeautyCon, right? Which has been going on for forever, but like, it's being like super well attended now by creators, both those who are building businesses, but others who are like moving product and doing advertising on behalf of big brands or collaborations or whatnot. So I'm just very excited about these like more specific events and conferences and vertical events.
Yeah, I think in the event world, it's been really interesting to see. So like I started going to events literally 2019 as like the peak of events, I would say, right? And then COVID hits 2020 and then events kind of like starting to rise back up again. I feel like these sort of niche events, whether it's Grace's event with Design Buddies or your event that you guys are creating with Creator CEO, I think those are on the rise versus the opposite is happening
agree.
with like the VidCons, the South Bys of the world, etc. I think it's kind of crazy to see that shift, but if you kind of look back, at least for when I was going to events in like 22, 23, all of the conversations when you went to VidCon, when you went to South by and things of that nature, were always about the side events that were happening.
Yes,
Not
yes.
necessarily like
Totally.
the events that were like official or whatever,
Yes,
right? And so I think it's been
100%.
really cool to see how that has sort of shifted event nature, so to say, over the past like 2 or 3 years. Like, what are your thoughts on that? It seems like you agree, but like, is that exactly what you guys are kind of building?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think on the decline of these, like, broader events, I think they worked when it was still, like, a cottage industry, and, like, it's not a cottage industry anymore, right? Like, we have to where this whole conversation started of, like, you have academics who are creators, you have business people who are creators, like, it's just too big to kind of generalize, this classification, right? As like your creators, we're gonna throw creator events. Like it almost like when you try and be everything to everyone, you mean nothing to no one, right? It's like that classic thing. But to your point on side events, I think that's just a byproduct of this, right? People are kind of opting into like forming these like side events and mini things where like that is the reason why they're gathering. And it's like it could almost be like a mini conference on the side of a conference, right? Which is just I think it just goes to show the need for, people being a little bit more specific when it comes to, you know, these in-person
What
events.
are what are your favorite events that you've gone to over the past like 6 or 12 months?
I mean, open sauce is amazing. It's like one of my favorite events. I actually do really still like Vid Summit. I think it's like a lot smaller than VidCon. It's a little bit more focused. I'm really excited. It's coming up in September. But Colin and Samir are doing a published press event in New York, which I'm really looking forward to. And then honestly, one of our sourcing ideas as of late is like I want to go to the weirdest niche conferences and like the weirder the better. Like take me to like commercial fishing Emporia. Like, take me to, like, that conference. Like, I think those are underrated in terms of finding cults and fandom and creators and people who are, like, leading these movements. So I'm pretty keen to, like actually, one of the I tasked one of the associates on our team with this exact thing of, like, go map out 50 niche conferences that we should consider going to. And, like, they better not have anything to do with creators.
Ooh, a fun one that you might be able to add to your list. I forget the name of it, but there's like a theme park one in Orlando. So I used to live in Orlando. That's why I know about it. But it's like really interesting because like you have part theme park where you've literally people will literally set up roller coasters inside the convention center and things like that, which is insane.
Insane.
But you've got all of these theme park companies that then are still vying for like defense contracts because or like Florida has a big defense industry too. So you've got this weird like dichotomy of defense as well as theme parks all in one spot. And I wonder if there's like a creator world in there in some way, shape, or form because the
Probably.
margins on that's got to be crazy, right? There's probably a really interesting business to be built in that space.
Totally. I mean, if you told me you were like, I am the god of VIP getting the VIP experience at theme parks, right? Like people spend a lot of money doing the fast pass at Disney World or whatever. Like 100%. Like I'm sure that exists. I'm sure it does.
That's cool. So I think I missed a part of it, but we were talking about like niche events, niche conferences that are not creator economy related. Um, how do you go about finding these things?
It's a great question. I think you kind of have to start with a theme or a category and be like, putting yourself in the shoes of someone who just like deeply wants to learn about theme parks or construct, right? And you kind of go through this exercise of, okay, like if I were trying to get up to speed on this category, like who are the people I need to follow and what are the events that are available and kind of, big and important in the space. Um, so it's a very hard exercise to go top down and be like, ChatGPT, give me a list of like 20 niche events. Like it'll give you a fine answer, but not actually the one you want versus, okay, I want to go learn about personal finance for the Hispanic community. Like I'm sure there's a conference and I'm sure there's like some interesting events happening. So you almost have to go bottoms up. And so that's kind of how we've thought about it.
Okay. I want to flip the script a little bit. I
Yeah,
want to see where your mind is at as like a consumer of content,
sure,
right?
sure.
So like what is something that is on your for you page that people probably wouldn't think about?
From like a
Yeah,
personal
yeah, yeah.
perspective, yeah.
Strictly personal, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's kind of a weird one. I've been getting pretty deep into like UAP and UFO stuff.
Okay, explain.
There's just like a lot of like really interesting conspiracy theories. I mean, I would like fully have my tin hat on and like we're just gonna go with it. But I mean, there's some amazing conversations happening on YouTube and in Reddit and blah blah blah, just around like disclosure and aerial phenomenon and is this like a government psyop or not, and it's, like, pretty interesting, and I have one of my friends has gotten me, like she's so funny, she's gotten me, like, so deep down the rabbit hole on this stuff, and she, like, keeps sending me content. And so that's been one that's, like, a little embarrassing, but it's definitely on my For You page. But it has actually led me to, um, see some interesting creators in the space. So, I recently met, she's so sweet, Neil deGrasse Tyson's, manager who he's actually, like, a naysayer on all this stuff. He's, like, pretty hard-headed and, like, "I'm not, this is all fake and blah, blah, blah." But then there are others that are like, "No, no, no," like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So there's a whole, like, internal turf wars. It's, like, just fascinating. Um, so that's one that was probably very surprising, but it's big on my YouTube homepage.
That's hilarious. Like, are you watching like 2 hour long talks about UAPs and UFOs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I try and, like, break it up, but, yeah, and then I got, like, my brother really into it, and he recommended this book by Lou Elizondo, so I, like, listened to that on Audible. Like, it's a whole web, and, like, once you go down the rabbit hole, you kinda can't stop, so
What's the one fact that would get someone down the rabbit hole? Like, if you were to tell me and Grace, what's the one random thing?
this is not really, like I mean, it kind of is a fact because there's a lot of research around it, but there's a really strong correlation between, UFO sightings and nuclear sites, and so there's, like, some pretty interesting, like you can kinda just, like, do with that what you will, like, or is this some, like, benevolent population that's trying to, like, prevent us from blowing ourselves up, or is there we have some access to certain technology that, like, they don't want us to know, like so anyway, that's kind of an interesting one to, wet your whistle, if you will, on the whole, UFO phenomenon, so
Yeah, I gotta check out UFOs too. I've always wanted to visit space and space and see some aliens and stuff.
yeah, it'd be
But
sick.
yeah, I'm also really curious. Like, since you've launched the Creator Fund, kind of changing topics a little bit. I know we have 20 minutes. Kind of like since you've launched the Creator Fund, has anything surprised you, or like has anything like evolved over a couple of months, like the way you evaluate different creators?
I think just in terms of surprise I mean, I think one of the biggest surprises, maybe not over the past couple of months, but maybe over the past year or so, um, has been how quickly the world of, like, serious business building and creators have converged. Where, like, put differently, 3 years ago, if you told an investor or a founder, you'd probably be a podcast host too, or, like, you'd probably be creating content on YouTube. They'd be like, "Ooh, cringe," like, "That's just for, like, people making weird cat video," and it's, like, total like, the lid is, like, off that, you know what I mean? Like, the cat's out of the bag or whatever the saying is, like, it is just all it back to our conversation of, like, everyone is sort of a creator. I think, like, the pace at which this has happened has completely exceeded my expectations. Um, and so that's, I think, probably been the biggest surprise.
Yeah, like how everyone's gonna be a creator like that random person in Nebraska writing articles about flowers. And
Yeah,
like you
I don't
hear
know
that.
why how we got it's, like, such a bad example, but that was, like, the
It's
first
okay. Wait, I'm
Nothing
also curious,
against
like
Nebraska.
diving into more of like your discussion you had about like AI. So do you mean like AI giving the creator like royalties whenever their work is cited? Or how does it enable creators to make more money?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, like, the mechanism is still very much, like, to be determined, but there's a lot of smart people thinking about, like, basically playing this technology forward, and the basic premise is, okay, a human kind of navigating the internet and, traditional advertising is, based on eyeballs, right? Like, how many people are, like, seeing an article or seeing this ad or whatever, but that's all based on the premise of how much a human can kind of consume on the internet. When you flip it and you're like, okay, AIs are using the web, right? Like, they can just consume so much more at scale. So it actually flips from this, like, advertising-based business model to an actual, like, performance-based business model, right? And, like, based on actually, like, how good is this content, or, like, how useful is this thing to me, or to my user, right? As if I'm an AI. And so I think that's kind of the unlock, and you basically play it forward and you're like, okay, it feels like there's a new economic layer that is going to emerge to kind of power this. And the output of that is, I mean, in a perfect world, is that creators are actually compensated almost in, like, a micro way, right? Of, like, as these things are referencing or using or sourcing their work, they can actually be compensated, and, like, you know, hopefully there's, like, an efficient market that kind of, like, sits on top of this, where their stuff can be, like, priced and they can actually get paid for doing that. It's, it is a very, very nascent idea. I've just seen more people start to talk about it. And it's, people way smarter than me. But but so anyway, I'm kind of like, it just has my curiosity really piqued, especially as it relates to creators and them being compensated for the great work that they do.
Have you ever heard of Trovio before?
Mhm.
Is that similar to what you're kind of talking about, or is that something different?
Um, Similar in spirit, but I think different in execution, where this would literally be like, okay, if Justin and Grace, like, you have your own AI agents or whatever, based upon whatever platform you use, like, that AI can go do a bunch of, like, programmatic searches on your behalf, um, and for some desired output or outcome, right? And so I think, it's actually not, like, being paid for, like, training data, it's actually being paid for, like, outputs. Or, like, creators should be paid for, like, outputs of a search, right? That a user might have. So it's, again, it's, like, kind of similar in spirit, but just, like, quite different in terms of, like, how it's actually being executed. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all but it's clear in my brain how this would work. And I'm tracking the people that are talking about it. Matthew Prince is one. So anyway, yeah, it's a very early concept, but I think it has potential to be an important one.
What's Trovia? Is it Trovia? Looking it up. Members only platform that aligns curated matches and experiences. A creator
It's
network.
Troveo. So
OV.
I'll share my screen real quick. I just came across it. I want to say like late last week or so. So I've just been looking into it. It seems kind of like Scale AI, but like for content creators, like content
Mm.
essentially.
Yeah, they're
Um,
basically like, asking creators to allow models to effectively, like, train on their data, and then and saying, okay, great, like, you'll get compensated for it. So it's more of like an input to model training than it is creator content as an output, right, for a specific search that can be programmatically compensated um as part of that search, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I get hit up by companies who do this too every day on email
Yeah.
for me to submit
Yeah.
my videos. Ah, interesting. Yeah, I'll look into that. How do you imagine like the payment out? It's like whether like for training, like is it like paid per specific video you do or paid how many times your video is used to generate? It's like so
I
hard to
have
calculate because
n
everything is a
I
remix.
have no idea. I have
Mhm.
no clue. Like, this is what I mean. I think it's like, it's definitely the Wild West. And it's like it's pretty easy to conceptualize for written content, right? Where like, someone is pulling an article that you wrote or or a blog post or whatever, that can be referenced, right? And you do a ChatGPT search today, it actually will include the links of some of the
Mhm.
source data, right? So like you can imagine that for text. Um, but for video, for example, maybe it's the AI was able to watch your video or watch multiple of your videos and you get paid programmatically because of that, and then it was used in an output for something. You know what I mean? I think, that maybe is but I don't actually know how it would be, like, facilitated. Again, those are harder questions for people much smarter than me to answer.
Mhm. Yeah, fascinating. I might just join
Yeah.
that and see what happens and report back on the numbers that
Well,
they
I don't know if there's any
yeah.
but by the way, I don't know that it's like I don't know that it's gonna be like a company like Trovio that's like, "We're gonna do that," right? It's almost like yeah, I think there's gonna have to be like, almost like a new economy that sits on top of it.
Mhm. Yeah,
But I'll keep you
fascinating.
posted. I mean, if you're interested, I'll keep you posted as I, like, read more about it.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I know you have to hop to a meeting soon, but I'm also curious, like in your experience, like talking with creators, being in the creator economy space, in the consumer space, what is like the biggest mistake you see creators make when it comes to like building a business or wanting to like raise venture for their business?
I cannot tell you how many creators I meet, and I'm like, "Who is your super fan?" And they have no idea.
Mhm.
They're like, "Males age, like, 18." I'm like, "No." Like,
No.
what is, like, back to like, what is the psychographic of this person? Like, why do they love you? What is, like, the emotional motivation for spending time with you, for consuming your content, for following you on 3 different platforms, right? Like, what are you saying that is speaking to them? And it's not all that hard of a question to go answer. I just think a lot of creators, for whatever reason, kind of struggle with it. And so I think, the best creators that we've seen, like, can articulate it and like know the answer so deeply. And you're like, okay, this is really interesting, especially as it informs content you make and the businesses you may go build. Um, so that's like the one thing I always try and push creators on is like go figure out the answer to that question. And then you can have a really robust conversation around, okay, like what opportunity set are you actually building against versus like, you know, females 13 and older, right? It's like it's just it's a lot richer of a conversation when you actually have a very real answer.
Mm.
Gotcha. Okay, so cool. I've got one last question, but
Yeah.
before I ask it, where can people find? It seems like you do a lot of writing. Where can people find your writing, as well as maybe your LinkedIn to connect with you and maybe shoot over some creator ideas?
Yeah, please do. My LinkedIn is just Megan Lightcap. I don't know like the thing, but you can just find me. I'm at Slow Ventures. My blog is called Slow Upload. And it is on Beehive. So you should be able to Google, I'm like the worst content creator ever. You should be able to Google uh slow upload Beehive or Megan Lightcap or something, and it should show up. And then I'm also on Twitter at Lightcap. So
Perfect.
those
Well,
are the
we'll get that
places.
call to action set for sure.
Amazing. Amazing.
So, my last question is: what's a question that you wish that we asked you? That could be around creator economy. That could be around life.
Mm,
Whatever you want.
mm. I wish you asked me because I actually had prepped for it what my current favorite creator brand is. You didn't ask that.
Oh, yeah, I did mention that in the chat. What are your current favorite creator brands?
So my younger brother actually turned me on to this one, and he's built such an amazing business. It's this guy, Bobby Parrish, of Flav City, and he makes like the best protein powders and like sleep supplements, and he's like his stuff is just great. He also has this app called I don't know like if you guys are like into like health and seed oils and all that stuff,
I
but
love that
or like
stuff.
okay, so you should follow him. But he has this app called Bobby Approved, and you basically it's genius. You just like scan a food label and it's like Bobby approved, not Bobby approved, and it's so dead simple. And he's capturing like all this amazing information and data, but it's like a really good consumer experience. It's like super simple.
Is that the
So
guy at like he goes to Costco and like
yes,
this is Bobby
yes,
approved or whatever? Okay, I
yes,
know who you're
yes,
talking about. I know who you're talking
yes,
about.
yes. He's like forever been like one of my favorite creators.
He started popping off at the beginning, and then
He did.
it clearly he seems like he's built something really
He's a
big off of it.
great business. Yeah. He was like a former like Wall Street guy too. It's cool.
Oh,
Totally like
interesting.
outside of the creator world. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions that we had. But Megan, until next time, appreciate you.
This was so much fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being
It was
on.
a great 90 minutes.
Yeah, happy to
Appreciate
have
y'all.
you.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.